Hello, everyone. In this session, we're going to continue looking at rewriting that podcast's website as a Symfony 4 application. It's kind of as a reminder of what we've done so far. Let's go ahead and check out the awesomely designed current working version. What we have publicly looks a little different, but we have the general idea here. So on the live site, we're up to episode 53. If we look down here, we're up to episode 52. So we're getting all of this information into the new database, which we didn't actually have a database previously. Looks like Oliver's just joined in chat. Hey, Oliver. Hope you're having a good day. One thing I have noticed that we're going to have to take a look at eventually is that we're importing some of the characters incorrectly for some reason. So I'm going to add that on the list of things to do. So we can work on that at some point. If we actually click into these episodes, we can see that there's an episode placeholder page that has the same URL that we would have had in the live site. So if I switch the URL with that from .test to .io, that is the URL that would be on the live site. So I think we've done a pretty good job so far of getting the information in. Now we just sort of need to make it a little better. So I think, I'm not really sure which order I need to do these in, but what I'd like to do is maybe start looking at the homepage listing and then look at the individual pages and sort of start to give more structure to the page using the data that we have. But before we do that, I'm going to try to make sure that this ingest command still works. Just to make sure, we're going to look and see if we can pull in episode 53 from the production site. So let's go ahead and run. See what our console commands are. It looks like we have app ingest. So let's run that. All right, now let's go see if we now have 53 episodes. There we go. So that's still working. So that's awesome. Also, we were working on an admin interface with EasyAdmin. So we can see now that episode 53 is here at the top, which is good. One of the last things that we did before we jumped out of the last episode, we added this number for sort and actually did some work to make sure that we could actually sort things correctly. The only problem I see with this right now is that this is a column that we don't really want to see. So I'm not sure how well we can actually use this, at least on the EasyAdmin stuff. So essentially I'm going to want to have something like number be clickable and have it actually use number for sort behind the scenes. And I don't know if that's going to be doable. In the meantime, it's going to work for us. I also want to double check to make sure we can actually edit things. It looks like our pagination stuff is working, which is awesome. So I want to find one of those episodes that has some weird text in it and just replace it. So it's the kind of show we do when we've not done one for a while. Just make sure that if we save this, the kind we've not done for a while. Let's head back to the site. Okay, Oliver in chat says that SymfonyCast has a series on EasyAdmin as well. So if anyone's curious about this and want to look at it in more detail, you can get some better ideas from that. All right, so for a while, which episode number was that? Actually, you know what? I'm not sure. Kind? Is it not actually showing up here? Oh, you know what? I bet that was a subtitle. Yeah, that was a subtitle. So that one's not going to be findable. I wonder if we have that. I know we have that problem here too. 30 of 56. Title. Here we go. The one where we don't really prefer this over that. I wasn't paying attention to which field I was actually changing, so there we go. So this is episode 20. All right, so it looks like the admin interface is still working like we'd expect it would. It has keeping everything across here like we should too. So I think that's going to be good to go. All right, so heading back to Tailwind, the thing that I'm going to try and do is use the container, just because it's, I don't want it to reinvent this wheel necessarily. It does some reasonable things based on breakpoints, so we can use these pretty reliably. And with MX Auto and a little bit of horizontal padding, I think it'll look really nice. So let's go into the code here and check out episode.h. There we go. All right, so right now, all we have is the title. So let's go ahead and create a div with a container and put our header in there. There we go. And so this was something that I ran into with a different site on another one of these sessions. If you look, the container that comes with Tailwind out of the box is using things based on pixel width. It's doing things based on viewport or the breakpoint based on actual pixels. The problem is that what we had already done for the navigation, and the reason that I actually have update primary navigation to use containers instead, is that what we had done initially was base everything off of the responsive design. So if we go to base, is it? So what we did here was we said that once things get to certain sizes, we want to switch to flex, and we want to do justify between, center add painting. So Oliver's saying that there's some ways to automatically change how Tailwind works. So if we go to tailwind.js, there's the center plugin. Center. And so we can do some things here like always be centering. So let's try that. Since I know this is the way that I'm going to like it, I think I'm okay with this. I think I might need to restart. Let's see if we need to. I think I might need to restart watching for this to work right. But the main thing was that what I had done here was set the max width to large once we get the large breakpoint. And then XL I set to the max width of XL. The problem is that these sizes, the max width, large and XL and such, those are actually based on rems. So if we go to responsive design, customizing the screen, let's see here, where's width? Here we go, sizing width down here. If we look at max width, these are based on rems. And the rems don't necessarily correspond with the responsive sizes that are, numbers like 576 pixel. So I'm not really sure how these are supposed to be used together. And I think that part of the problem might be that this is a work in progress. So I like the fact that these are using flexible sizing, but they don't work well with how the container is currently built. So something I might try another time would be to see if I could rebuild the container based on these values. But the easiest thing for now is to just use the use the existing container class just to get us going. So let's see. If I reload episode, if I just do container. Yeah, so Oliver's saying that, or asking if we could potentially use the widths in here, maximum width. Here we go. If we could use the same sort of values here. So, for example, if I do where are these values? Here. If I could go in here and instead of using small, medium, large, and XL, using pixel values, I could choose to use, say for small, the width, I could just customize this to be 30 rem because it would correspond with small. So I could possibly do that. You know what? I might as well. Let's see if we can do it that way, because that might actually be an interesting way to do this. The downside is then that I would have to figure out how to get those applied elsewhere. So maybe I won't. I think I'm not going to, but I think that is definitely one option. I just haven't spent a lot of time trying to make that change. And maybe I'll talk to someone from the Tailwind team and see how they handle this problem, because it does seem like something that people are going to run into. 576px is 36 rem. So yeah, so it does seem doable. I don't disagree that that's something that we could try at some point. But I think just to not go down too many rabbit holes, I'm going to try and use container because I've done that before. So see if I can not spend too much time on this stuff today. So here, so it does look like I'm going to need to restart watching. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you're using some of these tools. Occasionally you run into something that isn't going to be able to be hot loaded or hot reloaded. Not even hot reloaded, automatically regenerated by Webpack. Since Tailwind.js is something that actually is booted early into the process, if you make changes to the configuration, you actually have to start watching again. So let's see, or maybe it just doesn't work. No, it does. Okay, I did a hard refresh, so cool. All right, so that does make things a little nicer because I don't have to add those little bits in there anymore. So what we need to do now is look at what exactly we're doing here and figure out how we want to change it. So rather than setting these max widths, I think I can just call this a container. Let's see. I'm not going to worry about any of this. And I might have to cheat and just go look in the other code. All right, so that didn't work exactly as expected, and I think that's because of these max widths here. So I'm going to remove that. There we go. Now things should be more or less lined up with what we're hoping for. So let's see here, and mobile view, it's going to be somewhat reasonable. If I go back to responsive, everything's going to work more or less how we had hoped. So I think I'm okay leaving it like this for now. One of the things that I did on the Astrocasts site itself was I had to switch from medium being the breakpoint to being, I think I had to switch it to being small, and then something else at medium, and then large. Essentially changed the way that we were actually doing stuff with this header here. So I'm going to actually, I think I can, we have this invisible by default, and we have it visible at medium. So I think I'm going to change this to large. And there we go. So that's a quick fix for now. So I think I'm gonna be fine with that. All right, so we sort of fixed this problem now. So we're making the container, or making the primary navigation use the container class. Let's start looking at the homepage listing, because I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing to start mocking up. And also I want to double check how the existing layout works. So episodes we have at top, and that just goes to slash. So episodes, just to make it easier to actually navigate everywhere. And then I'm going to make this as well. All right, so it'll just make clicking around here a little easier for us when we need to start doing stuff like going into these. All right, so what we have now is this nice header. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I'm mostly going to start trying to style this part here. I don't remember if I'm using a special font that we need to try and keep, or if I'm just doing something basic like sans. Font family, yeah, so okay. So I'm not doing anything there just yet. For this font, still doing the same thing. All right, so main thing is we need the date, we need the title, and then we need the subtitle. So we're going to build a list. Home. Okay, so first we need our container. It's going to ensure everything's lined up correctly. All right, so at least it's lined up. Now we're going to use one of the utilities from Tailwind to reset the list. List reset. And what that's going to do is just completely unstyle the list, short of still having some like block level things set correctly. And before we go any further, I'm going to double check some of the alignment things here. So we have container and nav. So there's still some different padding here. So it's coming from app.css. Let's see. So I think we're overriding the padding on the navigation. So let's double check that. Yeah, so I'm adding P2 on here and removing the padding. And yeah, so the padding was 1 rem. So px4 would work. But since this is a container itself, I don't think it needs these at all. There we go. So this was the problem here, is that I was setting the padding to 2 previously, but since we're using container, this is overriding what the container would have, and the container defaults to 1 rem, which is 4, which would be the same as px4. So I mainly just wanted to make sure that the padding was consistent so that everything kind of looks good here. Okay. So I'm going to remove this because I don't want to override this, just to make it be exactly what it should have been anyway. All right, so back to home. For each of these, let's do div. Gonna have to go back here. So date, title, time, size, download. Date, title, I'm actually going to look at the source code for this. I actually did them as articles last time, so I might do that also. Yeah. I'm going to just copy this. All right. So I was doing something more interesting up here before, but I'm not going to do all of that. Article, time, header, div, p. All right. There we go. Okay. So href for the actual episode, episode number, and then episode.title. Okay. Let's see if this is going to give us something interesting. Okay, cool. So it's a good start. We have all of the dates here as they are, though, so we need to actually give the actual date time. Episode dot what do we call that? Is it published? Or did we? I think we punted on that actually. Date. This date, get date. Yeah. All right. So I think I wasn't sure how I wanted to handle dates, so I just didn't do anything with it. And actually, I don't want to just call it date. I think I want to be a little more interesting than that. So let's do published date. Let's do date time. Yeah, I'll just leave it like that for now. Then we'll do arm column, type equals date. And we do want to be able to make that nullable. And then let's do some getters and some setters. Because that's what you do. All right. Okay, so now we have published date and export published date. Actually, let's double check the export to see what we have. I think we just called it date previously. So from the export, it's called date. And we want to do new date time from that date. Unclear if this is actually going to look like we want. Jonathan Jeffries just said, should you be using an ordered list rather than an unordered? That's actually a good point, because order does matter. So the question comes here. And yeah, yeah, very much so. So we'll go ahead and do ordered list. We're still not going to show order in any way other than what is represented within the article, but that's a good catch. Thanks for that, Jonathan. All right, so episode dot, just since we're here, episode publish date. So we're actually getting the publish date from there, and then we need published date, get published date. All right, let's see. I think I need to actually rerun the ingest now with force. So it's a good thing we did this. We added this yesterday. So we'll do ingest force. And this is going to break. Failed to parse string. Ordered lists are more for sets of instructions where they need to be followed in a specific order. Yeah, like cooking a recipe or something. You know, I was going to say that I don't really know where I've used ordered lists in the past. I don't know. I'll think on that. Maybe you, Jonathan and Oliver, can discuss this in chat a little bit and see if they can come to a consensus, and then I'll make the change. Let's see here. So the problem now is that we're getting time in seconds. So date time from seconds. Let's do this in PHP. I think it might just be time. Looks like I just need to. I'm actually going to. Well, where's it at? So it looks like we just need to do something like this. It needs to have an at. Okay, so it's now complaining that we don't have a published date field, so we need to create a new migration. Doctrine. All right, let's go take a look at what version 2 looks like. Let's see. All right, so add publish date. And here again, this is that bug where it's going to do create public schema every time on a down. So we're going to remove that. Otherwise, I think this is going to be good. And let's go ahead and run the diff. Cool. And now let's try to ingest again. Okay, so it did something and didn't fail, so that's good. Let's see if it's actually going to. Actually, we're not going to be able to see it here, but an exception has been thrown. Cannot be converted to a string. Okay. So now I'm actually going to go look at how I was parsing this stuff previously. Podcast. Take a look at the twig template, just so I don't have to work through making sure this works exactly. So let's do layouts. Episode? No. I want to do index. All right, so episodes date C. All right. So we're going to pass this through Twig's date filter to make sure that we actually end up with something that's a string. So there we go. Publish date, date C. I should be able to render now. Cool. Behind the scenes, we're actually showing this value, hopefully. So let's see if it's Yeah, so this is 2014-05-07. So yeah, that should be good. I don't know, were we not doing something with pub date before? No. Okay. And then I'm actually going to copy this line because I don't want to retype this. Essentially, I'm pulling out little bits and pieces of the published date and showing them. And the only thing that we'll have to do is change it so that it's using published date instead of date. So episode dot date, we'll do episode dot published date. There we go. Now let's see if these show up correctly. Okay, so we're actually seeing May 7th, May 22nd, June 3rd. So those are showing up correctly, which is great. Let's see here. So those are right. The H2, I think, is just the subtitle. Yeah, episode.subtitle. Cool. So now we're getting that second bit there, which is pretty good. One other thing that I want to do is reverse this order. There's a couple of ways I could do that, but I think I can just do reverse. So the newest episode's at the top. So I probably should go change the default sort on the repository itself, but I'm just going to be fine with this for now. Okay, so the time information I'm going to want to pull in from the previous template as well. This probably should be something that should probably be handled a little differently. But it is what it is for now. Essentially, inside Twig, it's trying to figure out how to use the appropriate suffix for the amount of size the download is going to be. Yeah, Oliver was just going to say that it would be better in reversed order. Yeah, I mean, part of this is making sure that, yeah. Why did that have a size? I'm just going to go all the way then. All the way through the controls. So there's some classes in here that were only being used because I was doing some style sheet things. This very much looks like a case where I might want to create some components with Tailwind rather than using Tailwind raw. File size nor the method file size. But we'll have to see how bad it is when we start to actually do these things. So we need file size to be changed. And download URL probably is going to be the next one it complains about. Yeah. So I think we just have media URL. Yeah. So I'm going to add a getter here that's going to be a placeholder for stuff in the future. So I want to be able to differentiate the URL between its purposes. So an RSS URL and a download URL for sure. So public get download URL, and it's just going to return the media URL for now. if there is one. And then we'll do RSS URL. Cool. All right, so if I close this stuff, it's actually going to point me to different MP3 files for the download, so I think that's a good way to go. It's still saying date. Yeah, so Oliver's saying it might not make sense to extract stuff since this isn't a for each loop. I can't remember how much of it's reused in other places. It may not actually be. If I go to an individual episode, it still has this, but it's not similar enough that I think it should be duplicated. So that's a good point. That's one of the main things to keep in mind with Tailwind. It's a good idea to do it first without creating components. And if you run into a case where you need it, then you can use it. So I'm going to try and do some quick styling here. To get a little bit of spacing in place and remove this little bit because we don't need this anymore. And since we were talking about it earlier, I'm going to do a Google search to see, should I use an unordered list for, should I use an unordered list for, should I use an unordered list for, a list, blocks of content are relatively large. So, well, all right, ordered lists, very much unordered element. Reversed attributes. Description list. Items whose order does not matter. Ordered list creates. That doesn't look like it's going to be fun to think about. Yeah, so that's what I was seeing too. Oliver just pasted a link and said that this example uses an ordered list to show the sequence of steps in a process. I think that's probably closer to how I expected it to be used, so I think I might switch this back to an unordered list. The only thing I see potentially problematic with that statement is that it says that this example uses an ordered list to show the sequence of steps. It doesn't necessarily say that unordered or ordered lists show sequence and steps. List related items using grocery list. I think this is probably going to come into some weird theory stuff and interpretation of this kind of document. I don't feel like I want to worry about that now. Details about number order. So, sorry about that, Jonathan. I think I'm going to switch back to doing an unordered list for this one for today. And if I find a good reason to switch it, or if you find some good examples showing where this sort of thing should definitely be an ordered list, that would be appreciated if you could share it. All right, so I'm going to start adding some padding here, just because I want a little bit of breathing room. So the LI itself, let's do some stuff on that. Let's do some Y padding of, say, 8, just to show that it's actually separate items. The original design did have a border. I don't know if that was implemented with the horizontal rule or not. I don't want to reinvent the wheel if I don't have to. Border top 2px solid, not first of type. I don't know how well Tailwind does that stuff. Let's do sudo not. They differ in the way that with the OL element, the order is meaningful. It's I don't know if the chat actually cut off the rest of what you said. Try changing the order of the list items. If the meaning is changed, the OL element should be used, else the UL is adequate. So I have seen, let's see, there's podcasts. So I think if I were to really get picky on this, I would say that the episode order does not matter for this particular podcast. There are some podcasts I know that do matter, specifically the ones that like that are more like entertainment. I think like was it the Serial podcast, where you're actually listening to them in order intentionally. I'm not sure if that I don't know if that would make sense for us in this case. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people who are really going to look at the most recent episode. They don't care about the rest of it, and actually the podcast doesn't care either. Whereas, if, what's in episode 53, if episode 53 had information in it that depended on episode 52, then I could see how order would matter here, but not necessarily the way it is now. But yeah. Jonathan says, I guess you're the domain expert. I guess. I think it's an interesting discussion, but not one that I don't know. I'm going to leave it as an unordered list now, and if I fancy changing it later, I will. I think it was good that you brought it up, because it's definitely something I think I needed to take a look at. And it's always good to actually try and figure out if what you're doing actually makes the most sense. So now I'm going to try to do some border stuff. So I'm going to do border 2. I'm going to do top. And we'll do border gray. Do we have some grays? We have, let's do a light gray. And let's see if this actually does anything to us. Okay, that's not at all what I was hoping for color-wise. So I guess darker. That's too dark. Maybe I just do gray. How about that? All right. It's not terribly pleasing, but I'm just gonna let it go. And then this does put this top line here, which we don't want. And one of the things that Oliver mentioned before was, rather than trying to do some stuff with pseudo selectors, we could actually use some twig stuff. So we can do if. Let's see, it's loop. Is it just loop dot first? So if it's not loop dot first, then we can add the border to the top. The reason I'm not maybe super excited about this is this is pretty messy. And I can see if we end up getting another 10 or 15 classes in here, that could become problematic. But let's see if it actually works as advertised. Okay, it does. So that's pretty awesome. So we sort of have what we're looking at here. Let's go down to the title. One thing I do know is this is wrong. We might have to build something specifically to convert this back into a duration, but we can worry about that in a bit. Okay, so let's go down to title. I don't want the href to be underlined or anything like that. So class, no underline. There we go. So we'll start there, and we can start with text black. All right, and let's do H2 episode title. Let's do class text gray, dark. Yeah, no harm splitting the classes onto multiple lines for readability. Yeah, there are other ways around this, so it doesn't have to be exactly the way that I'm doing it here. All right, so we have gray darker. Let's do this same thing to the time. And remove this little bit here. And let's add the same color to the controls. think those were all more or less the same on the old design. Yeah. All right. So we're getting pretty close to the end of my time available for this. So I think this might be pretty close to where we'll end it for now. But I'm pretty happy with the progress on this listing page. It doesn't look exactly like what the old one looked like, but I didn't really expect it was going to look exactly the same. We do have some of the functionality here that we would be expecting. I can do some things with, tightening up some of this other stuff. I think one thing that I need to do is spend a little bit of time and come up with the actual color scheme. So maybe we'll do some of that next time and take a look at which colors I was actually using before. I think this might actually be using opacity. No, I guess it's not. Yeah, it's not. Jonathan asked, did you think of adding the formatting of the file size to the model in PHP? That is actually something we could consider doing as well. So the main reason that I kind of went the path that I did, for example, with the file size, like this was all done in Twig. The big reason that was done in Twig is because that was the only option I had available for it's the only option I had available for the previous site. So I already had the code to do that. When it comes to actually storing data now and being able to have a proper model to do things, yeah, a bunch of this stuff could potentially be put into the entity itself. So that's a good thing for me to keep in mind. We're already doing some stuff to on the import from the old site. So for example, we have convert hours, minutes, seconds to seconds. So the export actually had the format that we were looking for, which is why this functionality hasn't existed yet to go from seconds to this other format. Mostly because I feel like it does make more sense to store this data in the database as seconds, as an integer, rather than trying to store some other data here that we might not be able to work with as easily. I'm going to look at the parser that we have now. Dave actually created the ability to import data from the feed generated by our actual host. So we got Slugify, strip and clean. So he actually had the duration. Okay, so the duration actually comes directly from the feed. So I think what that means is when I generate the feed, which we haven't done yet, we're going to have to probably reproduce that same output as well. So iTunes XML duration. Yeah, so we're going to need to have that same duration style anyway. So yeah, so we are going to need to do that. So that is something that we can add probably on the next one. So I want to make sure I don't leave too many of these bits and pieces laying about. Otherwise, it's going to be really easy to ship this. And that's probably not going to be the thing that makes me the happiest. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to commit this code, and then we'll go ahead and pick this up again tomorrow at the same time. And then again tomorrow night, there's going to be another longer episode where I'll be working on the Astrocasts website a little bit more. Thanks for joining. If you have questions, comments, critiques, criticisms, things you liked, things you didn't, please email me. The other thing, I just this morning, well, last night, but at like 4 a.m, I got the newest version of the Astrocasts site launched. And it includes a link to get into our Discord channel. So if you're interested in chatting or doing some community things with other people watching the Astrocasts live sessions, this is a good way to get involved on that. All right, well, thank you all, and have a good evening.